Thank you, Donald, and good evening, everybody. And the European Commission have told us that we can no longer keep our application going for a European City of Culture in 2023. Also, tonight on this show, I'll tell you more about how the European Army is advancing. We'll question the competence of John McDonnell, the Shadow Chancellor, when it comes to numbers, and we will be commemorating an event that took place 100 years ago today across this country, one that brought a brief moment of joy to a country that was going through a rough time in the First World War. I wonder whether any of you can guess or know what it was. But the main story that I'm keen on. So the situation is that we had already had agreed that in 2023 we would host one of the European cities of culture. And to that end, tremendous work was going on. In fact, cities already have been spending taxpayers' money preparing bids. They include Leeds, Dundee, Nottingham, Milton Keynes, Belfast and Derry. And so why would you want to be a European city of culture? Well, because you get funding. Yeah, what happens is some of our own money tends to come back to us. But one of the reasons people were so dismayed, and indeed, I mean, Nicola Sturgeon was distraught. She said she was absolutely dismayed by the decision. But one of the reasons a lot of people got a bit angry about it was because in the past, you know, in 2010, Istanbul was a European city of culture, and Bergen in Norway was one in 2000. And in fact, if you look at the list of countries that are eligible, given, remember, that now we're not, we've been discontinued, Iceland, Norway, Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, Montenegro, the Republic of Serbia, they're all eligible to be European cities of culture, and they're moving towards a position where before terribly long, Georgia, Moldova, the Ukraine, Tunisia and Armenia in the future will be able to bid for European cities of culture. And we've been discontinued. Now, we're told that the reason is very simple, that to qualify, you have to be an EFTA or EEA country, a candidate country, or a potential candidate at some point for EU membership. And given the length of the list that I've just read out to you, kind of fits in with what Barroso, the previous Commission President, said when he said we are building an empire. And yeah, they want to build a global expansionist empire. That is the ambition of the European Union. We've said we're leaving. We've also said we're leaving the single market, although it's not impossible that we might have some hookup with EFTA at some point in the future. But nonetheless, we're told we've been discontinued. Now, I don't know. Am I being completely paranoid? Or is it that this European Union is being vindictive? That basically the boys in Brussels have never liked us very much anyway, and they're feeling really good today because they've got their own back. Maybe I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I've got this completely wrong and that actually it's logical. Because Brexit means Brexit, that we should take part in none of these cultural programmes. If that's your view, call me on 0345 6060 973, or perhaps you think, hey, come on, this is crazy. We're not leaving Europe, we're leaving the European Union, in which case text to 84850, or maybe you frankly, and I have to say, I'm in this category, couldn't particularly care less, in which case you can tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC, and you can, of course, watch us live on Facebook and comment there too. My view, and it's one that's shared by my fellow Brexit campaigner Aaron Banks, is I hope that after this we're booted out of the Eurovision Song Contest as well, because I reckon we get a pretty rough deal there too. So tell me, I think they look like they're being vindictive and nasty, because that's the kind of people they are. Tell me I'm wrong. Matthew in Bournemouth, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. I think this is very sad, actually, because, I mean, I voted Leave, you know, because of my dislike to the European Union.
Yes.
But I do still feel very European, and I do very much love Europe and being part of Europe. My only concern is that this is actually an initiative you know, that was designed by the European Union. So, you know, if that's, you know, something we're not part of, then perhaps it is right that we're excluded. The other thing is that obviously they have opened it up to EEA countries as well, of which we're also part, and I actually hope that we remain part, which would actually entitle us to participate in the program. So, really I'd like to just ask you if you think that we will or should stay part of the EEA and continue with these sort of initiatives.
No, I don't think we should stay part of the EEA. The EEA is the position Norway finds itself in. It's far better, Matthew, than the position we're currently in, because they've got their fishing rights and many other freedoms that we don't have. But no, I think the EEA still would bind us commercially in this country in a way that's unnecessary. What is possible, Matthew, is we could find a hookup of some kind with EFTA, the European Free Trade Association, which again is an organisation that dates back to the 1950s. We might find a hookup with that, provided there's no free movement of people. So you could find that we'd left the European Union. We weren't part of the EEA, but we did have a relationship with EFTA. So maybe they'll change their mind. No, look, the point is, Matthew, that they use programmes like this and the prospect of money. It's to lure countries into thinking that if you join the European Union, if you become part of their empire, that really good things are going to happen to you. So, but like you, Matthew, I'm not anti-European in any way at all. And if there is going to be a European City of Culture programme, maybe there'll still be one when the European Union's folded, and perhaps we'll find another means of doing it. So Matthew, you feel a bit disappointed today?
Order, yeah. I think they're bang out of order anyway, because the thing is, we do know for definite that we're leaving the EU.
Yeah.
And despite what you say, we don't know for absolute sure that we're going to be leaving the EEA, which would, exclude us. So
that is true.
Really, I think they are being petty.
Yes. No, Matthew, I don't want us to stay in the EEA, but it's not impossible that we would. Hey, if Labour win the next election, that's where we may well be, which of course would be before 2023. They're being petty and vindictive, says Matthew in Bournemouth, who is disappointed by this judgment, this letter that was received today. Robert from Rugeley in Staffordshire is calling. He's a new caller to the show. Robert, am I paranoid, or are they just being vindictive and nasty?
They are being vindictive and nasty. Ever since the referendum, there's been drip, drip, drip. Bad news for the British people, and this is just another example of it. They're a totally dishonest bunch of crooks, and I'm a retired police inspector.
So, in some ways then, Robert, their behaviour today, for a lot of people who voted Leave, their behaviour today rather proves the point why we left, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. But they're a bunch of crooks.
Well, now, that's a very strong piece of terminology, and one or two have been proved to be crooks. We can't call them all crooks, Robert, can we?
Well, if they conspire together, then I would say yes. Just remember, not all conspiracies are theories.
Robert, I thank you for the call. And should we in some way go back and beg them to allow us to have a European City of Culture?
Well, if we're supposed to honour our commitments, I think they should be honouring theirs.
Yes, and they had pre-agreed this would happen in 2023, and we've net paid them 180 billion quid since we joined, and yeah, they look petty and vindictive. Robert, I thank you for the call. I get callers like Robert. I feel like, I'm quite a mild Eurosceptic compared to some people out there in the country. Nigel, Culture. This is typical sulky Brussels. They are acting like school children as usual. Their decision will only devalue the award. So stick it, says Mick in Wallington. Hey, it's saving us a lot of money. So jolly good in that way. We won't have to entertain the sour grapes people. Saving money all round, says Caroline in Hants. Well, the only trouble is, Caroline, quite a lot of money's been spent by these cities preparing for the bids. And I think, those cities themselves tonight are going to be pretty cheesed off. Hi, Nigel. Petty, vindictive, small-minded, strange, self-righteous, bullying, spiteful. That's the EU for you. Glad we're out, says Graham. Somebody else says to me, Britain is European. Well, you know what? You can call Britain European without having to be part of the European Union. As I've argued for years, they are clean, different things. Another Robert is calling. Another new caller. He's from New Malden. Good evening, Robert.
Hello, Nigel. Good to speak to you. So, on this City of Culture debate,
Yeah.
I think my view is that the EU is a bit premature because I imagine that in a year or maybe even after a transition period, we'll end up staying in the customs union and the single market, and therefore they may wish to reverse that decision at that point. So they might as well allow Dundee and Co to persist with this 2023 bid, because by then we'll be good Europeans outside the EU trading with the EU without the disruption of a chaotic Brexit.
Or is this, Robert, is this in a sense part of their negotiation? To say to us, if you cut all ties with us politically and in terms of trade deals, that actually it's a very lonely world out there. Is this part of them saying, stay with us in some way?
I can't imagine that even they think that this has much weight with anyone over here. So maybe they just want to annoy Nicola Sturgeon, which is...
Well, they've done that. No, they've succeeded with that. No, absolutely. Robert, I think your point's a valid one. None of us know what the shape of Brexit is going to be by 2023. Indeed, I'm quite fearful that we won't have the clean Brexit that I try to get people to vote for, and they've jumped the gun. Robert, new caller from New Malden, makes that point. Nigel, if we get booted out of the EU Song Contest, people will take to the streets, I'm told, by text. Yes, in celebration, because we would not have to go through that ritual humiliation of being voted down every single year. Terry Wogan was the only good bit of it. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 7:15.
LBC Daily Debrief with Richard Suchet.
Today, as Jamie Bulger's killer is back in prison, I talk to a convicted murderer who says there's no such thing as rehabilitation. Prison is about survival, and he would have happily gone to the gallows.
Live now to download. Go to lbc.co.uk/daily or from wherever you get your podcasts.
The Oak Furnitureland Black Friday event is now on with an amazing up to 75% off. There's a design for every room in your home with contemporary, modern and classic traditional styles, plus beautiful shabby chic painted collections to choose from. And don't miss our exclusive selection of sofa designs, all delivered free and still available for guaranteed Christmas delivery. Head to your Oak Furnitureland Superstore or shop online today at oakfurnitureland.co.uk. But hurry, our up to 75% off Black Friday savings will end Friday.
If you haven't taxed your car, here's something to think about. At the DVLA, we have the records of over 37 million vehicles on our database. Currently, we are clamping or impounding over 10,000 untaxed vehicles every month. It's nothing personal. It's the law. So if you haven't taxed your car, we'll find it. Tax it or lose it. Go to gov.uk/DVLA/car tax.
Every week, thousands of people sell with WeBuyAnyCar.com. Whether it's a Fiesta or a Ferrari, a Mini or a Merc, a Beamer or something else beginning with B, a big bright blue Bentley, WeBuyAnyCar.com makes selling any car simple, fast and hassle-free. Probably why it's called WeBuyAnyCar.com. Change the way you sell your car. Enter your reg number now at WeBuyAnyCar.com. Terms and conditions apply. See WeBuyAnyCar.com/info.
The binder's broken again, and it's so slow and awkward.
Binding will always be a bind with a budget machine and supplies that aren't really up to it in the first place. Talk to Single Source Binding Machines. Their precision German-made binding machines are built to last for superbly bound documents every time, quickly and reliably, complete with free lifetime maintenance.
Call 0207 515 0539.
Exclusions apply. Lifetime maintenance based on purchase of supplies for the product's lifetime.
It's estimated that 64 million PPI policies were issued with millions of them missold. Are you sure you weren't one of them? PPI Hotline can check for you and get back the money you could be owed. Text WIN to 82222. We will check if your bank loans and credit cards had PPI for free. And if it was missold, we'll help you win back what you could be owed. Just text WIN to 82222.
PPI Hotline. Text WIN to 82222.
Text will be charged at your standard network rate.
Oh, I said, let's get a new kitchen, like I was getting a coffee. What was I thinking? Demolishing a room and making a new one? Who does this? And how am I an actual grown-up? Relax, relax. It's Trust a Trader. Just type in your postcode, what you need, and bam, local tradespeople appear. All who know what they're doing. For realsies. Oh, maybe I should get a new bathroom too. And a dress-up room. And a room for the kittens. Visit trustatrader.com.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Despite a previous agreement that we would have a European City of Culture in 2023 and that cities all over the UK are preparing bids and spending money and getting the applications ready, they've reneged on the deal, haven't they? They've told us no. Because of Brexit, you can't have a European City of Culture, despite the fact places like Istanbul have been European cities of culture in recent years. And I'm getting a very strong reaction from lots of you to this, because I'm asking the question, am I just being paranoid, or are they being vindictive and nasty? Are they, as I've said for years, bad people, or perhaps, as the US president would say, bad dudes, because I think they are. Ben on Twitter makes a very, very valid point. He says, if the EU expect us to honour future commitments, it is rank hypocrisy for them to renege on theirs. Perhaps it's time we walked away, says Ben. And that is actually a pretty good point. Annette feels very strongly. She lives in London. She says they have a darn cheek, to put it mildly. How much have we paid in over the years? And they want a massive billions divorce bill? It's all take with them and really mean of them. Spiteful, says Annette. Nigel, let's face it, Europe hate us. They always will. And quite frankly, I think it's jealousy, because we have left an undemocratic, failing European Union, says Alex from Poole. Ian says, you know, I used to love Europe. I speak Dutch. I speak Italian. But I loathe the European Union. They are very petty, and I'm glad we're leaving, says Ian. So there's a lot of strong opinion here. But I do think that, you know, the idea that we're being asked to meet all of our commitments and more, and to pay some gargantuan 40-60 billion bill to leave, and yet they're not prepared to allow us to continue with something that had been agreed to have a European City of Culture in 2023. I think leavers will take the view, God, dear, oh dear, thank goodness we're out. A lot of remainers will say, God, just why do they behave as badly as this? And the answer to that is because they do. At least that's what I think. Nick is calling me from Harlow. Nick, what do you think?
Well, you asked a question about paranoia, Nigel.
Yeah.
Yes, I think you are being paranoid.
OK, explain.
Why should the EU bend over backwards to help us? Why are they bullying us? Why are they being vindictive?
I'm not asking them, Nick, to bend over backwards. I'm asking why they're not meeting a pre-existing commitment.
Well, you know as well as I do. The negotiations aren't going well. We can't come up to agreement. And it wasn't the EU that had this referendum, Nigel, was it? We had this referendum.
Oh, no. No, the EU, Nick. No, the EU, Nick, if people have the temerity to hold referendums and they get a result they don't like, ask them always to vote again, of course, doesn't it?
The temerity to run referendums, you lot on the Brexit brigade, you didn't even have a manifesto.
Do you know, well, manifestos are for governments, aren't they? Jean-Claude Juncker said, I hope there will never be another European referendum. That's how he feels about people expressing their free will.
It wasn't about free will at all. You know that referendum was nothing about democracy whatsoever. Well, it was all about just playing on vanity, as if it's some kind of big political adventure. And at the end of the day, it was only 37% of the electorate that voted. Much of the electorate was moderated. There was no 16-year-olds allowed to vote.
Thank goodness.
EU tax-paying nationals were allowed to vote.
Thank goodness.
And, well, why?
Well, because this was a vote about...
They've been playing into the exchequer, and they've been actually...
Well, they can vote in local elections, Nick. Nick, I mean, clearly you're very upset with the referendum result. And I mean, I presume, Nick... I mean, if I'm wrong, you tell me. I mean, would you like us to rethink our decision?
Well, yes, I think Parliament should rethink the decision.
Okay.
And I think, no, if we've had a referendum and it's failed, instead of being classed as a Ramona, and I'm not a Ramona, My view was the only reason why I voted Remain was to counter your bogus Brexit arguments. That doesn't make me an avid European or an EU fan. Yes,
No.
I'm a European, but some of your nonsensical sound bites, like getting our country...
I know, absolutely. We want our country back. That's what I said, Nick, all over the country. I shouted it from the top of an open double-decker on a microphone. I hope I don't have to do the same thing again. But you can't be a country, you can't be a proper nation if you can't make your own laws, surely.
Well, unfortunately, capitalism doesn't quite work like that. Capitalism is cross borders, and that's what we are, a capitalist country. And the EU is a capitalist...
No, it's not.
bloc.
It's corporatist. It's a big corporatist political club run by giant multinationals to the detriment of small and medium-sized competitors. Nick, we mustn't debate this because it's not the subject tonight, but it's fun. Nick, I would just say this to you, that for anybody out there who feels like you, that you didn't like the referendum result, didn't like the campaign, and fine, it's a democracy, we're allowed to disagree and dislike what other people say. But I would make this point to you, Nick. Those people out there who want us to rethink it, want Parliament to have another vote, perhaps some even want another referendum. All I would say, Nick, to you and to all of them, is the way the European Commission have behaved today damages their prospects of Parliament or this country rethinking that decision.
Well, all I'll say to you is you're talking absolute twaddle.
All right, fair enough, Nick. No, that'll do. That's fine. Thank you. Nick thinks I'm talking a complete twaddle, load of old baloney, but I genuinely think there'll be lots of people out there who voted Remain in the referendum who will see the way they've behaved, the vindictive way they've behaved over this European city of culture, who will also have seen the fact they didn't condemn, they supported the Spanish police behaving as they did in Catalonia on the 1st of October. I think the scales are falling from the eyes of the British people. They realise that Brussels is not run by very nice people. That's my view. David is calling from Orpington, a new caller. Good evening, David.
Hello, Nigel. Pleasure to speak to you. I've written to you at the old grain store, but that's many moons ago. I've followed the progress with absolute delight. Can I say this evening, and picking up on your point about EU, the EU is an office in Brussels. It is not Europe. And this is probably a difficult problem for younger people and a lot of older people who should know better. You see, a younger person might say, why, when we've been going on for 41 years, has this suddenly come up? Well, I'll tell you why. As you well know, Nigel, it's because the government of this country, regrettably, was in the know from the beginning with Wilson and co. They all knew the ultimate object was to create a European state, and it wasn't just a trade agreement. Ironically, here we are 41 years later, still arguing about trade, but I'll pass over that one.
Yeah.
There is another thing here that they didn't... You see, we floated this. They floated the EC, you will know, as a trade agreement all those years ago.
They did to the people, and that was dishonest. But David, can I bring you back to your first point, which is the important, really important point that you made? And I do think this distinction is vital, and you made it in your first sentence. The EU and Europe are, in my view, and I think in your view, different things, aren't they?
They are, and can I tell you, but if I may, and I'm sure you know from your contacts in Europe, about way back in the 90s, in Le Monde, there was a very serious article in the debate supplement which reported cases of actual depression and anxiety and problems throughout France. And this was contributed by psychiatrists, authors, journalists, all learned people. And what we're really saying is, don't look at the advertising, don't look at the way the public front of the EU is presented in this country. The French, of all people, are sick at their heart.
I think people who believe in nation-state, David, are sick all over Europe. I thank you for your call. It's an important point David makes. You know, they in Brussels, with their glass and steel structures and their flags and anthems, think they represent Europe. I don't think they represent Europe. I think, and I've been travelling Europe this week, as you know, visiting individual countries with their own wonderful customs, cultures, languages and ways of doing things. I'm asked on Twitter, I said... Make your mind up, for goodness sake. You wanted out of everything, now you want to be in things. Why are you moaning about it? Give it a rest. Look, I couldn't care less about this particularly. I don't think it's very important. All I do think is that given there was a pre-existing deal, the fact they've broken it shows you the kind of people we're dealing with. I'm not particularly, I'm not like Nicola Sturgeon. I'm not absolutely dismayed that we haven't got a European City of Culture. I really couldn't care less. I'm certainly a withdrawalist from the Song Festival every year, the Eurovision. I'm not bothered about this, but I do think it's very instructive for our Brexit debate and for our negotiations. We are dealing, folks, with dishonourable people. That's the point I'm making. I wonder what Jackie and Paul in Dorset thinks.
Oh, well, what I think, I wouldn't bother with their old thing of City of Culture. We've got Glastonbury and all that. What do we need all that for? Anyway.
We've got plenty of culture, Jackie, as it is, yeah?
Something nice for the politicians to dance around all the youngsters with mini skirts, isn't it? And
be careful, be careful.
I will. No, what I was going to say, Europe's going bust. They're desperate for us to pay a load of money because they're short of money in Europe. And I was looking on the finance thing on the telly yesterday, and they said Deutsche Bank is in terrible trouble, and all the countries are in real trouble. 6 countries in Europe, Poland and Czechoslovakia, Slovakia, Romania, they all are putting barriers up against Europe. It's not a happy place at the moment, Europe.
No, barriers and walls and border security and, no. Look, it's not working, is it, Jackie? And everywhere you look, to the Spanish constitutional crisis, to the fact the Germans now can't form a government because the Eurosceptic party has upset the arithmetic in the parliament. Everywhere you look, it's going through a rotten time. We're leaving them. They're not happy. And they've chosen, Jackie, thank you for the call, and they've chosen to break a pre-existing agreement whilst insisting that we keep all of the ones we've made to them and many more that they've added on top. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 7:30 and time for the news with Moira Alderson.
An economic think tank has been looking at the small print of yesterday's budget and says it has some concerns. The Institute for Fiscal Studies is suggesting the UK is in danger of losing 2 decades of earnings growth rather than just one following the 2008 crash. All UK Uber customers and drivers are being told to immediately change their passwords. The National Cybersecurity Centre has issued advice after it emerged the ride-hailing company covered up a data hack last year and paid a ransom to the hackers. UK cities bidding to be crowned the European Capital of Culture have been told they won't go forward in the contest because of Brexit. The European Commission says it's one of the many concrete consequences of leaving. LBC weather, blustery showers in the north tonight with some turning wintry over Scotland. Rain in the far south of England, mostly dry, cold and clear elsewhere. An overnight low of 6 degrees.
LBC travel in Walworth and New Kent Road remains closed in both directions between Elephant and Castle and the Bricklayers Arms. It's following an accident and there are delays throughout Newington and Kennington. In Surbiton, Victoria Road, that's closed in both directions outside Surbiton Station, and that's for the Christmas light switch on. It's causing queues all through Kingston, New Malden and Tolworth. And in Palmer's Green on the A10, there's a lane blocked northbound at Church Street. That's following an accident there. LBC Travel, I'm Anne-Marie Walsh.
This is LBC.
Look, our lowest ever black tag prices on hundreds of products at Currys PC World. Up to £500 off Samsung, LG and Sony TVs. See in store or look online. The 49-inch Samsung Smart 4K Ready HDR TV is only $479. There's up to £200 off Windows laptops from $299. And 10% off mark prices on over 1,000 large kitchen appliances. Top brands Bosch, Hotpoint, Samsung. See for yourself. At Currys PC World, we help you get it right. Deal subject to availability.
Can you think of a reason why you shouldn't apply for an Ocean credit card? There's a credit limit of up to £1,500. They send you texts so you keep control of your spending, and you can see if you'll be accepted before you apply at checkocean.co.uk. Plus, checking won't affect your credit rating. But before you go and check, there's just one reason why you shouldn't. Because you've already got an Ocean credit card, right? Otherwise, get checking. Go to checkocean.co.uk. Intelligent Lending Limited is a credit broker. Capital One is the exclusive lender.
Critics are falling in love with British movie sensation Film Stars Don't Die in Liverpool.
That's Gloria Graham, big name in black and white films.
Witness the extraordinary true story of a real-life Hollywood romance.
Won an Oscar too.
Radio Times calls it beautifully made, witty and incredibly moving. And The Guardian says there is tremendous warmth and tenderness to this sweet, sad love story. Don't miss Annette Bening, Jamie Bell and Julie Walters in Film Stars Don't Die in Liverpool. In cinemas now. Rated 15.
I'm there as she's rushed down the corridor of A&E. Her bloodied hands are hanging limp from the side of the hospital bed. She desperately needs a transfusion. She keeps asking for her fiancé. We turn the corner. And I'm here, finally, in the snack aisle. I pick up a selection of crisps before realising that I forgot the potatoes. Back to the fruit and veg aisle it is then. As a blood donor, you can save someone's life while going about yours. Register at blood.co.uk.
I know what the plough looks like in the night sky. I know how Eskimos kiss. I know a time when a mullet wasn't a fish. And I definitely know this piece of music. But I don't know my state pension.
Find out more about your state pension and how much it should be. Get to know your pension. Visit yourpension.gov.uk.
The DVLA can spot an untaxed car a mile off. So, whether you're from Sutton-on-Sea and drive an SUV, or East Ham and own a white van, the fact is we have the records of over 37 million vehicles on our database. So if you haven't taxed your car, we'll find it, tax it, or lose it. Go to gov.uk/DVLA/taxitnow.
The Nigel Farage Show. Text 84850.
Before we get back to whether the European Union has been vindictive in reneging on its promise for the United Kingdom to have a European City of Culture in 2023, there's a theme that we've run on this programme before that I want to pick up on, and it is Italian European Commissioner Federica Mogherini. She is the head of the European Defence Agency, amongst many other things, and today was their annual conference. And addressing a 400-strong crowd, the whole of the European defence spectrum was there. Governments, armed forces, industry, EU institutions, NATO, think tanks, media. And Mogherini said that the conference was taking place at the most important moment for European defence in decades. And they're unveiling a whole series of new structures, such as Permanent Structured Cooperation, PESCO. You may remember we debated this just a few weeks ago. She said it was a big moment, and here are her words.
Exactly 10 days ago, I received a letter notifying that 23 member states are ready to embark on a permanent structured cooperation on defence. And let me add that others might join in the coming days. We are building the European Union of Security and Defence. It's not a plan anymore, it's not a dream anymore, it's reality coming true.
There you go. It's a reality coming true. A European Defence Force, Army, Navy, Air Force. Are you listening, Nick Clegg? And many of you in the Remain camp who said that I was a dangerous fantasist to say this would happen. Well, boy, it is happening. Also, last night we talked about the budget, and a lot of you, particularly the younger listeners, said that they thought that Labour was more competent to run the economy than the Conservatives. And I said, if you remember, that I did think that Jeremy Corbyn struck a chord with many of those who are having a tough time in this country at the moment, but I wasn't sure about their competence when it came to dealing with the economy. Now, today, John McDonnell, the Shadow Chancellor, was interviewed. He was asked a very simple question. He was asked to give a figure for the cost of servicing the government's debt pile, something I think that anybody in his position should know at the click of a fingers. This was his response.
The type of journalism where you go into an interview and someone asks a question on a particular figure, to be honest, is trite form of journalism. That's why we have iPads and that's why we have advisors, etc.
I clueless is how the Evening Standard described John McDonnell. The figure is 48 billion. That is what we have to pay every year in interest to service the size of our national debt, and all he can do is describe it as a trite form of journalism. And anyway, it wouldn't matter if he was Chancellor, because he's got an iPad. And he's got an assistant. And, you know, this is not the first time there have been real questions about McDonnell's competence as Shadow Chancellor. Back in May, speaking on Radio 4's Today programme, he was thrown a question about the economy, and this was it.
What is Britain's deficit at the moment, Mr. McDonnell?
If I can say to you, that what's happening is, well, in terms of day-to-day expenditure, we need the investment.
He hasn't got a clue.
We need the investment.
Sure. Did somebody pass you a piece of paper? What is our deficit at the moment?
Not at all.
Just sounds like there was a bit of paper being handed across.
Not at all.
What is our deficit at the moment?
The deficit at the moment is 68 to 70 billion pounds.
I think you're being a bit too kind, actually. I think it's 52 billion is the latest figure.
The prediction by the government was 68 to 70.
I mean, you couldn't make that up. That was in a general election. He didn't know what the deficit was as the Shadow Chancellor, as the man who, if Labour had won the election, was about to take control of the economy, and he didn't know what the deficit was, and today he didn't know what the cost of servicing it was. I repeat, I do understand that Jeremy Corbyn does appear in many ways to have the interest of those who are struggling to heart. He speaks with passion on this issue, but I'm afraid surrounding him, and I haven't even mentioned Diane Abbott and the Nick Ferrari interview that we got during the general election, they haven't got a clue. Back to this question, is the European Union being vindictive, and is it, by breaking a previous commitment, showing us the type of people they really are? I believe that to be the case. If you think I'm paranoid, please tell me. Carl is calling us from Newcastle. Carl, good evening.
Hello there, good evening, Nigel.
Good evening.
Hello, it's my first time ringing in, so...
Well, welcome.
Oh, thank you very much. First time ever ringing LBC, to be honest, yeah.
Well, Carl, you're on LBC, and you can tell me that I'm right, or you can tell me I'm completely wrong.
Well, I have to say, I do disagree with you, because, I mean, like, in my eyes, like, you're throwing out the rule book here, like, this is a decision which was not just adopted by the European Parliament, but was also the European Council back in April 2014, which the UK had a vote on, and, like, it says you've got to be an EU member, an EU candidate, or be an EFTA EEA. Can you care to explain about that?
Well, no one knows by 2023 what our status will be. I hope we'll have left the European Union. I hope we'll have left the European Economic Area. We may have some form of tie-up with EFTA. But, Carl, there's a different point here, I think, that's emerged in this debate, and it's this. They had already made that commitment. And if they're going to discontinue this application, they are reneging on a deal they've previously made. And yet they're asking us, Carl, in these so-called negotiations, to meet every commitment, not just the ones we've agreed to, but others they've invented too.
However, what about the commitment where we had the presidency of the European Council, and then we decided to revoke from that? Do you really think that would have gone ahead at this moment in time? Because I didn't hear anybody from the Leave debate, whether it would be you from, like, the Grassroots Now campaign, whether it was from Vote Leave. I heard not a single word about the European Capital of Culture. There were no implications given from you guys about that. And I'd like to see you try and tell me that it was a complete and utter waste of money back for Liverpool having it in 2008. Because do you really think that our government would have gone ahead with the Echo Arena? Do you really think they would have gone ahead with the regeneration of Liverpool Dock?
Well, hang on, Carl. Liverpool did get European City of Culture, and it did get some money, but Liverpool 1 and Liverpool 2, those massive redevelopments were happening anyway. It may well, Carl, have helped a little bit. You know, sometimes getting some of your own money back for things can be very useful. I'm not particularly bothered, frankly, about whether we're in the European City of Culture programme or the Eurovision Song Contest or any of it. But, Carl, there is a really big point here about the way these people are behaving through these negotiations. And I think tonight they look, at best, small-minded and at worst, vindictive.
For 1 second, can I just mention one thing about the Eurovision Song Contest? That's made by a completely different organisation.
I know it is. I'm teasing.
It's the EBU. But you're
I know. I'm teasing, Carl. I'm teasing. I'm teasing.
But you're never mentioning that once at all.
It's a completely... Eurovision is a completely separate thing. It is the EBU. I do know that. I understand that. I was actually pulling your leg. Carl, you clearly think Brexit is a bad decision, yeah?
I disagree with it because I'm coming from experience here. I've just had an absolutely fantastic year at Stockholm in Sweden on the year abroad. It was absolutely brilliant, and regardless of what you lot say with your tinfoil hats and everything, from Infowars.com or whatnot about Sweden or whatnot. Yes, I can hear you laughing in the corner right there, Nigel.
I am. Did you see yesterday, Carl, that in one Swedish city now, if joggers go out at night in the local parks, the police will accompany them for their own safety?
I'd like to know what town that is, to be honest, and I'd like to know the ins and outs of it.
Yeah, I read it yesterday. It wasn't Malmo, it was a similar town. Carl, I'm not going to row with you about Sweden. Look, the point is, you can love Europe, you can love travelling around Europe, all right? But you don't have to love the European Union. The EU and Europe, I would argue, Carl, are different things.
But I'd love to know the relationship between a Schengen CTA area when that doesn't exist anymore, because I tell you what, at the minute we've got no precedent for what we're doing, no EEA, no EFTA, no Schengen, no CTA, nothing like that. It's never been done before, and
well, do you know something, Carl? Through the centuries, the British have been first at many things, and we got more things right than wrong over the years. Carl, first-time caller, loved your call. Loved your points. Hope we hear from you again. Wayne says on Facebook, we won't be a member then. This is what Brexit is all about. This is just the start. Fine, OK, Gary says, this proves how petty the EU really are. They continue to show this on a daily basis, and Matthew says, if you leave the club, don't expect to be included in its party. This is what you get for having Brexit. That's fine, Matthew, but this was a pre-existing agreement. And we've got pre-existing agreements they think we should honour. Well, if they don't honour theirs, why the hell should we honour ours? You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show. Exclusively on LBC. It's 7:45.
Coming up at 8 on LBC, Clive Bull.
Government figures show the number of new apprenticeships has dropped year on year by 59%. Is becoming an apprentice still a good route into work?
Clive Bull on LBC.
Nick Ferrari's Best of British Interviews, a series of conversations with leaders in the world of business, media and the arts on LBC. This Friday, former Pizza Express owner Luke Johnson will join Nick Ferrari at breakfast to share his business success story. Head to lbc.co.uk to find out more and to win a weekend away in Europe or the UK. Nick Ferrari's Best of British Interviews on LBC with Hampton by Hilton. Book direct for the lowest price.
The Oak Furnitureland Black Friday event is now on with an amazing up to 75% off. There's a design for every room in your home with contemporary, modern and classic traditional styles, plus beautiful shabby chic painted collections to choose from. And don't miss our exclusive selection of sofa designs, all delivered free and still available for guaranteed Christmas delivery. Head to your Oak Furnitureland Superstore or shop online today at oakfurnitureland.co.uk. But hurry, our up to 75% off Black Friday savings will end Friday.
Sky TV customers, bring the magic of Sky Cinema home this Christmas for just £10 a month. Cozy up in front of your favourite classics, like How the Grinch Stole Christmas.
Yes!
With over 1,000 movies on demand to watch whenever you want. And get a new premiere every day, like Kong, Skull Island.
That's a big one.
So, that's Sky Cinema for just £10 a month. Search Sky Cinema. New 18-month contract. Further terms apply.
Your journey is always more pleasurable with Aeroflot Russian Airlines. Our young fleet flies to an enormous range of destinations. Come and experience true hospitality delivered by our expert cabin crew and pilots, made even better by the choice of exquisite cuisine served on board. Then just sit back, relax, and enjoy the comfort of our state-of-the-art aircraft. You'll find you've enjoyed yourself before you've even landed. Fly Aeroflot.
Relax. It's TrustedTrader. Just type in your postcode, what you need, and ta-da! Local tradespeople appear. Visit TrustedTrader.com.
Come to Galliard Homes for brand new London apartments from under £300,000. Westgate House is superbly located, just a 6-minute walk to the tube that has you in the West End in 21 minutes, which is roughly the same time it'll take you to drive to Heathrow. There are exclusive on-site facilities, rarely available to buy in a London development at these prices, such as 24-hour concierge, co-working space, a private screening room and health club. To live the London lifestyle from just £300,000, come to Westgate House, Westgate, Ealing, London, W5. Call 0203 770 6300 or visit GalliardHomes.com. That's GalliardHomes.com. Galliard, getting Londoners on the ladder.
Leading Britain's conversation. LBC, The Nigel Farage Show.
The European City of Culture promised has been discontinued by the European Commission today, which has upset many cities in this country who were preparing their bids. I think it's a complete breach of trust. Yes, of course we're leaving the European Union, but if they're reneging on a deal, why on earth are we expected to meet all of our commitments and more? Phil is calling me from Cobham. Good evening, Phil.
Good evening, Nigel. I really struggle with trying to see through these blinkered, rose-tinted spectacles that you Brexiteers wear. Why can't you see the the grand idea of what the European Union is all about?
What you mean, crushing nation-state democracy, Phil?
Basically, if nation-state democracy, Nigel, come on. I really don't understand why you can't even see the irony of that situation. You know, your own party at the last general election got 4 million votes and didn't even get one MP. I mean, these things are the mechanism. No democratic system is perfect.
No, Phil, I'm not going to argue with you about electoral systems, right? Because I agree with that ours is imperfect in many, many ways. The point I'm making, Phil, is do we want... this is the big question, isn't it? Do we want a Europe of nation-states cooperating together, which I would favour, or do we want a Europe that is run from the centre and that is being created as a state itself? That's the big question, Phil.
Okay, Nigel, let me ask you a question, because there's no empathy on any of the Brexiteers about thinking how you'd think if you were, living in another European state. And I ask you one question, Nigel.
Yep.
Please answer this honestly. If you were born in the Weimar Republic around about 1933, what might you have done in Germany?
Phil, I'm going to answer you that indirectly, but relating to that period. My friend Mr. Juncker, who is President of the European Commission, his father was a steel worker in Luxembourg, and when the Germans invaded in 1940, he was conscripted into the German army because the Germans deemed them to be Germanic peoples, sent off to the Eastern Front and badly wounded. Mr. Juncker believes that the European project is there to stop these terrible things from ever happening again. I have never, Phil, for one moment, doubted the sincerity of those people who were behind this back in the 1950s and 60s. However, the way that you achieve peace is, of course, by people talking and trading together, all of those things. But you don't achieve peace. You will not achieve peace unless you recognise that the reason European nations went to war is because they weren't democratic. They weren't being controlled by their electorates. And whatever the good intentions, 60, 70 years ago, the European Union has now become a self-serving machine in Brussels that I don't think represents the interests of its members, Phil, and as you've heard today, is now becoming a military union as well. Phil, I'm arguing we've moved a long way from the high ideals of the 1950s.
Well, I would say even more important now in what's going to happen over the next 30 to 50 years in the world, that we're going to see seismic changes in the power, distribution in the world. Your, if you like, Anglo-Saxon, liberal concept of democracy is going to be under a threat because the world, the power structure in the world is changing. It's going to move east.
Phil?
America is going to lose its dominance. We're tied, with the Anglo-Saxon speaking commercial side. We're tied in with that. We are going to lose our dominance, Nigel, and if we want to maintain our basic cultural attachments, of which we have many with Europe, I've lived and worked in 4 different European countries, this is a really serious issue. This is the one. I'm not worried about short-term trade. That's almost piffle in many respects. We will trade, there's no doubt about that. We're a trading nation. But what we've faced to lose over the next 50 years and then the other thing, on the city thing, Nigel...
No, Phil, I'm not going to move on to that because we're not debating that specifically. Yeah, you and I have had a big debate tonight about the big picture of Europe. I would say to you, I disagree with you. We've cut ourselves free from a failing club and we can actually then engage with the rest of the world. But listen, you believe in what you believe in very passionately. Let's get back to where we should be, although it's very difficult with any European debate not to get the big stuff being debated as well. Are the European Union behaving in a vindictive manner, or am I just paranoid? I'm going to ask Matthew in Leicester that very question.
Well, no, I don't think so. I honestly think the EU are starting to look and sound like a jealous ex-girlfriend.
Right, okay.
In the case of, the way they are going on is making all of these promises, as you've quite rightly said, and saying that they're going to do certain things, and then with the other bat, actually taking it back and saying, well, no, but we can do this because we are the big and almighty. But the moment we try and suggest that we should do something similar, it's not happening. And the reason why they're doing that is not for their own interests. It's to scare other nations.
Yes.
And as Juncker said, they're doing it because they don't want to have any more referendums. And the real reason why all of this is going on is to actually say, do you know what? Yes, we can make promises, and yes, we can pull them at the last minute. And guess what? There's nothing you can do about it. If you want to leave, that's fine, you can go. But we're also going to run our own rules, we're going to do whatever we want to do, and we're going to tell you that you've got to play by a different game. So I think it's roughly about time now we started playing them at their own game.
Yep.
And I once saw something somewhere about how the European Parliament building costs something like, I don't know, 40 billion or 40 million or something like that.
Well, it's quite a big difference, Matthew, between the two, but let's say a lot of money, shall we?
It's a lot of money, okay? Well, in theory, we own a percentage of that. So
yep.
I tell you what, Nigel, next time you're over there, take your bucket and spade and start digging our bit out for us.
Well, I'm going to ask Mr Juncker for 16%, because that's what we pay in, of his wine cellar, and see how he responds to that, because clearly we're entitled to that. No, you're right, Matthew. We've got assets in this club as well. Listen, thank you very much for your call. The caller earlier who told me how wonderful everything in Sweden was, and how the picture I was painting was wrong, I mentioned the Swedish city. It is the Swedish city of Oskarshamn, and now joggers going out after night will have the option of being accompanied by armed police officers. This is something that the local inspector thinks will make people feel a bit safer at night going out in a Swedish city. Who would have believed I'd have said that about a Swedish city just 5 years ago? It is truly incredible. The Remainers will blame us, the Leavers, says Paul in Raynham. It's time to come clean, Nigel, with the British public. You never told us the true consequences of leaving the European Union, says Catherine. Well, Catherine, to be honest with you, I wasn't thinking particularly about European city of culture. I was thinking about the big picture. I was thinking about the net 10 billion a year. I was thinking about the lack of ability to govern ourselves. I was thinking about leaving a club that I think is going to collapse and fail. Anyway, they were my thoughts. And thank you, everybody, for taking part in that debate. Now, I said to you at the top of the show that it was 100 years ago today that something very significant happened. It happened in London, but not just in London, but across the rest of the United Kingdom. London, I guess, was the symbol of it. And it was all because on November the 20th, 1917, 400 British tanks went into action at 6:20 in the morning with devastating consequences for the Germans and their Hindenburg Line, which they thought was unbreakable. In a day, across a front of about a 10-mile width, we broke through. We moved 5 miles in one day, and we moved more the next day. And as a result of this, something remarkable happened. At the start of the war, partly because of fear of Zeppelin raids and many other things, and also because of the losses the country was taking, a decision had been made to silence church bells. Even Big Ben stopped ringing in 1914. And yet, because of this huge news that came out, it was decided that bells would ring. And on the 23rd of November, 1917, it was St Paul's Cathedral that began all of this. And a correspondent for The Spectator magazine said the following. He said, "The joy bells of the London churches today gave voice to the popular rejoicing at a great victory on the Western Front. It is the first time these peals have rung since the outbreak of the war. I went up Ludgate Hill to hear the great bells ringing. At first, it was a big bell known as the Great Paul. Thereafterwards, it was joined by a peal of a full dozen bells. People cheered and exchanged greetings and smiles. And the sound carried out to offices, shops and warehouses of the great news. And it happened in St Paul's, and it happened across the whole of the country. And this is what they heard outside St Paul's on that day. Well, in fact, it wasn't the end of the war. They had to wait another year. But we'd found the weapon, we'd found the means that would end the war, and in that desperately bleak year of 1917, it was a brief moment of joy in St Paul's and across the rest of the country. You've been listening to the Nigel Farage Show on LBC. I'm back on Sunday morning at 10, where we're going to look at the plight of British fishermen and the impact of common fisheries policies on stocks. Coming up at 10 tonight, it's Ian Collins, but up next, it's Clive Bull.
Nigel, thank you. So the National Cyber Security Centre has recommended all Uber customers and drivers should change their passwords immediately after the data breach. We'll have advice on...
My only concern is that this is actually an initiative that was designed by the European Union. So, if that's, something we're not part of, then perhaps it is right that we're excluded. The other thing is that obviously they have opened it up to EEA countries as well, of which we're also part, and I actually hope that we remain part, which would actually entitle us to participate in the programme. So, really I'd like to just ask you if you think that we will or should stay part of the EEA and continue with these sort of initiatives.
No, I don't think we should stay part of the EEA. The EEA is the position Norway finds itself in. It's far better, Matthew, than the position we're currently in, because they've got their fishing rights and many other freedoms that we don't have. But no, I think the EEA still would bind us commercially in this country in a way that's unnecessary. What is possible, Matthew, is we could find a hookup of some kind with EFTA, the European Free Trade Association, which again is an organisation that dates back to the 1950s. We might find a hookup with that, provided there's no free movement of people. So you could find that we'd left the European Union. We weren't part of the EEA, but we did have a relationship with EFTA. So maybe they'll change their mind. No, look, the point is, Matthew, that they use programmes like this, and the Bull was a European city of culture, and Bergen in Norway was one in 2000. And in fact, if you look at the list of countries that are eligible, given, remember, that now we've been discontinued, Iceland, Norway, Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, Montenegro, the Republic of Serbia, they're all eligible to be European cities of culture, and they're moving towards a position where before terribly long, Georgia, Moldova, the Ukraine, Tunisia and Armenia in the future will be able to bid for European cities of culture. And we've been discontinued. Now, we're told that the reason is very simple, that to qualify, you have to be an EFTA or EEA country, a candidate country, or a potential candidate at some point for EU membership. And given the length of the list that I've just read out to you, kind of fits in with what Barroso, the previous Commission President, said when he said we are building an empire. And yeah, they want to build a global expansionist empire. That is the ambition of the European Union. We've said we're leaving. We've also said we're leaving the single market, although it's not impossible that we might have some hookup with EFTA at some point in the future, but nonetheless, we're told we've been discontinued. Now, I don't know. Am I being completely paranoid? Or is it that this European Union is being vindictive? That basically, the boys in Brussels have never liked us very much anyway, and they're feeling really good today because they've got their own back. Maybe I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I've got this completely wrong, and that actually it's logical. Because Brexit means Brexit, that we should take part in none of these cultural programmes. If that's your view, call me on 0345 6060 973, or perhaps you think, hey, come on, this is crazy. We're not leaving Europe, we're leaving the European Union, in which case text to 84850, or maybe you frankly, and I have to say, I'm in this category, couldn't particularly care less, in which case you can tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC, and you can, of course, watch us live on Facebook and comment there too. My view, and it's one that's shared by my fellow Brexit campaigner Aaron Banks, is I hope that after this we're booted out of the Eurovision Song Contest as well, because I reckon we get a pretty rough deal there too. So tell me, I think they look like they're being vindictive and nasty, because that's the kind of people they are. Tell me I'm wrong. Matthew in Bournemouth, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. I think this is very sad, actually, because, I mean, I voted leave, you know, because of my dislike to the European Union.
Yes.
But I do still feel very European, and I do very much love Europe and being part of Europe.
Thank you, Donald, and good evening, everybody. And the European Commission have told us that we can no longer keep our application going for a European City of Culture in 2023. Also, tonight on this show, I'll tell you more about how the European Army is advancing. We'll question the competence of John McDonnell, the Shadow Chancellor, when it comes to numbers, and we will be commemorating an event that took place 100 years ago today across this country, one that brought a brief moment of joy to a country that was going through a rough time in the First World War. I wonder whether any of you can guess or know what it was. But to the main story that I'm keen on. So the situation is that we had already had agreed that in 2023 we would host one of the European cities of culture. And to that end, tremendous work was going on. In fact, cities already have been spending taxpayers' money preparing bids. They include Leeds, Dundee, Nottingham, Milton Keynes, Belfast and Derry. And so why would you want to be a European city of culture? Well, because you get funding. Yeah, what happens is some of our own money tends to come back to us. But one of the reasons people were so dismayed, and indeed, I mean, Nicola Sturgeon was distraught. She said she was absolutely dismayed by the decision. But one of the reasons a lot of people got a bit angry about it was because in the past, you know, in 2010, Istanbul's prospect of money, it's to lure countries into thinking that if you join the European Union, if you become part of their empire, that really good things are going to happen to you. So, but like you, Matthew, I'm not anti-European in any way at all. And if there is going to be a European City of Culture programme, maybe there'll still be one when the European Union's folded, and perhaps we'll find another means of doing it. So Matthew, you feel a bit disappointed today?
Order, yeah. I think they're bang out of order anyway, because the thing is, we do know for definite that we're leaving the EU.
Yeah.
And you know, and despite what you say, we don't know for absolute sure that we're going to be leaving the EEA, which would, you know, exclude us. So
that is true.
Really, I think they are being petty.
Yes. No, Matthew, I don't want us to stay in the EEA, but it's not impossible that we would. Hey, if Labour win the next election, that's where we may well be, which of course would be before 2023. They're being petty and vindictive, says Matthew in Bournemouth, who is disappointed by this judgment, this letter that was received today. Robert from Rugeley in Staffordshire is calling. He's a new caller to the show. Robert, am I paranoid, or are they just being vindictive and nasty?
They are being vindictive and nasty. Ever since the referendum, there's been drip, drip, drip. Bad news for the British people, and this is just another example of it. They're totally dishonest, bunch of crooks, and I'm a retired police inspector.
So